Well, Jesse, welcome so much to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. I am so excited to talk to you.
I am excited too. I was trying to read what it says in the back there. You have my whole heart for my whole life. Okay, there's some love in that house over there. I
I
like it.
love
I like
that.
it. Yeah, that's amazing. It's good to see you too, and I love you're pumping me up already just with the little slogan.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to talk to you because as we were talking, I started following you and oh my gosh, I mean, right now you're traveling across the country. People may know you as Joe from the Pop TV sitcom This Just In. You're a basketball trick artist. I want you to tell them about that. You're a celebrity teen coach turned motivational speaker. You help young adults who struggle with mental health, self-esteem, anxiety, depression, self-harm, phone addiction, connecting socially. You're the founder of the Attitude Advantage. You're the host of the LeBeau Show. Oh my gosh, and so much more. And you have a pretty powerful story about being an underdog. And so I want you to tell them your story and where you came from and your roots and all of that.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of work. I feel like you deserve an applause break here, or maybe some water. Um, I'm exhausted just from hearing you say all that. I feel like I need to go take a nap. I appreciate that. I feel like someone who's very, very fortunate and very blessed. My big dream was basketball my whole life, and I was able to tweak that dream into something that was totally different than anything I ever planned that I'd be able to do. And I still get to use basketball quite a bit. Like you said, I'm in our little basketball tour bus here, and we have a basketball hoop on the back, and it pops down. So as I travel around, we'll have a little basketball competition, a little basketball fun everywhere I go. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. So the story really is I was just born on a little island in Alaska called Pennock Island. Have you ever heard of Pennock?
I don't even think so.
I don't think anyone has.
I could say it sounds familiar, but I think I'd be lying.
No, it's about half a mile wide by 3/4 of a mile long, just maybe 30 or 40 homes now today, and no roads or stores or anything. So we took a boat every day just to get to town. And town, we called it, it was like we're going to the big, the city. It's one road going left, one road going right, four stoplights, and then a fence on either end of about 15 to 20 miles of road. You're trapped there. There's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do. In Alaska, it's also dark almost all the time during the winter. So I'd go to school, it would be dark. I'd get out of school, it would be dark. And it rained about 13 feet a year. Usually more than that. We called it liquid sunshine. They literally have a measuring stick in the center of town, and it's like how much water it's gotten up to, and it says liquid sunshine on it. So as you can imagine, for all those reasons, there was a lot of problems with drugs, with alcohol, with depression, all across the board, from not seeing the daylight, from being isolated. There's more bars than churches. That's one of the things that little town is known for, which is a weird thing to be known for. Probably not a good thing. And for me, I felt kind of trapped and isolated, and I felt like I couldn't go and achieve the big dream that I had.
Mhm.
And that big dream for me was to be a basketball player. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to get a scholarship, and I eventually wanted to get paid to play basketball. I wanted to be a pro basketball player. The problem with that is I was by far, and if I stood up, you'd be able to see, but I still am quite small. I was the smallest kid, smaller than all the girls. So when I would tell people, hey, I want to be a basketball player, they would laugh in my face. They would tell me I wasn't going to ever be able to do it. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't big enough. And I had a series of stories where these kids bullied me in pretty embarrassing ways. And it just made me feel alone. And I just was isolated. And
Wow.
the shift for me was I decided I can control my attitude, and I can decide to listen to all these outside forces who are telling me what I can't do, or I can do the thing that I want to do. I can be the master of my attitude. I can go for it. I can create the life that I want to live. And I can team up with the right people around me that won't be tearing me down, but will actually build me up. And when I made that decision to team up, it transformed my life forever. So I started waking up every morning at 5. I'd take that boat over to town and go up to the school. this janitor. His name was Larry. He would open up the gym for me every day. He wasn't supposed to do that, but out of the goodness of his heart, he did it. And that one small act of kindness from him completely changed everything for me. And I went on to have a good high school basketball career. I got to play college and get my education paid for. And then I used basketball and learning how to do tricks to be able to break into entertainment. So I started doing commercials and movies and TV shows. My very first commercial was with Kobe Bryant. I put on his shoes and I take on all of his powers. It was the dream commercial, and I got lucky, some luck and some hard work in the right time, the right place. And I got this dream commercial. My friends who had been in the industry a lot longer were like, "How the heck did he get this one on the first try?" And I'm like, "Oh man, Hollywood's going to be a piece of cake." And it was. It wasn't. And I did a movie with NBA superstar Kevin Durant called Thunderstruck, which was a lot of fun, and it led to more commercials and movies and TV shows. I got to have maybe arguably the best day of work anyone's ever had. I got to be hand-fed cheeseburgers by supermodel Heidi Klum
I
from.
watched that.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
They paid me to be in that. Can you believe that?
The Graduate. It was like a
Yeah,
play on The
yeah,
Graduate, wasn't
yeah.
it? Oh my
I was the
gosh.
Dustin Hoffman. They had my hair kind of how it is under the
Yeah,
hat right
went
now, kind of
down.
dorked out. Yeah, and yeah, and it was literally all because of basketball, the thing I was told my whole life I wasn't supposed to be able to do. And so what happened from there is, a lot of different things, but the condensed version is I started playing street ball professionally, and I got to travel the world and be teammates with Allen Iverson, who's one of my favorite Hall of Fame NBA basketball players. I had his poster on my wall. I mean, I practiced his moves, I watched his games. This was like a basketball dream heaven for me. And what would happen is after these games, kids would line up for, I don't want to exaggerate, I want to say miles, but we would be out there for hours for them to come and take a picture and hang out. And it was mostly because of Allen Iverson, and I was just the guy on the team that was there too. And that happened everywhere we went, all these different countries. And eventually we went back to my hometown, that little Ketchikan, Alaska I was telling you about. And we did the same thing, and they lined up just how they did in all the other places. But on this particular situation, they were kids who I knew their families. I knew their older
Wow.
brothers and sisters. I knew their parents, and it just hit me in I call it my light bulb moment. And oh, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. It's not supposed to entertain for an hour with basketball tricks and fun, which is great, but I could share my story. I could write a book. I could start speaking and do more than just dribble a basketball, but I could still use that as the hook to capture their attention. And that was that light bulb moment. I wrote it all down in the notes in my phone on the flight back to California when we left Ketchikan on Alaska Airlines. I remember it very, very vividly. And I slowly but surely went and did all those things and wrote the book and started speaking and traveling all over the world. And it turned into us having a program and, shooting television shows and programs. It's just been an unbelievable journey. And I'm so grateful because I feel like right now we are at a place where kids are hurting and lonely, just like how I felt in Alaska all those years ago. Even though they all have this phone and they're connected on the internet and on social media more than they've ever been in the history of time, there's never been more kids who feel disconnected and not truly having meaningful relationships where they spend time with them in person. And I don't care what anyone says, and there's not really anyone who will argue it with me, but you can't replace a one-on-one or a group connection in person through a screen. This is great, you and me doing this right now, but if we were in the same room, it would be even more powerful and it would be even more impactful. So I'm on this mission now to help kids team up and really find their group, find their tribe, find their community that they enjoy being around, that they can develop social skills, that they can do life with. Because we all know the quality of our life depends on the quality of our relationships. So your life's going amazing, you're doing good, great. You need people to celebrate it with you, and you do the same thing with them, or else there's a lot of billionaires and a lot of multimillionaires who have it all seemingly on the outside, but are very unhappy. And on the flip side, going through life's difficult times, which we're all going to go through, which I know isn't very motivational speaker of me, but tough things are going to happen, and you
Mhm.
need more people that are going to be there for you, just like you're going to be there for them and do life together. And that's something that's kind of missing today, that community that we used to have in person.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It is so lonely and kids are so lonely now. And I agree with you because I do so much on the screen and I can get lonely and isolated because there's a different energy when you're with somebody. You're with skin on, and you're right there. And so being behind our phones and then kids are comparing themselves and how many likes am I getting? And then, gosh, the way that the algorithms, I know that was a huge issue with the pandemic work and all the eating disorders that started up because they want to get healthy, but then they just start getting all this body stuff in their feeds and that I don't measure up, to what I'm seeing. And then that creates even more, issues and lower self-esteem. You talk a lot about developing resilience, and you talk about the challenges. Our kids are having challenges, and how to help them develop that grit and resilience. And that's what you really had to develop. Like you had to realize, like, I want more for myself. And what happened there? Like, where was the light bulb switch moment that activated that in you?
Yeah, great question. And just to go off of something you said a little earlier, it is I saw some research today that people are actually more depressed now than they were at the peak of COVID and during the pandemic. And it's because we got used to being isolated and now like I don't want to go to work anymore. I literally got off call this morning with a girl in our program who's not going to school, doesn't want to go to school. It's and we're getting that all the time, but then they're isolated and lonely now that the world has returned to quote unquote normal. But there, when you aren't connecting with people in real life, like you said, it takes a piece of your soul and your happiness. And we're meant to be around people, even though it's nice to curl up and watch Netflix and we have these screens all the time. There's just no replacing that. So um I love what you said there. And I know you have an amazing community of moms, and I'm really grateful to get to come and spend some time with you guys here today. So, as far as building that grit and that resilience piece, for me, my dad taught me a lot of lessons through sports.
Mm,
And so we would go and watch the older kids, whether it was Little League baseball or we had football later on, but mostly basketball, soccer, and baseball where I was. Which in Alaska, it's outside, there's snow, it's dirt, and not grass. It's a whole different ball game. But we would watch and we'd watch the best players and we'd see how did they respond not when they hit the home run, not when they had the game-winning shot, but when they made mistakes, when they overthrew first base, when they struck out, when they dropped a pass. What did
mm,
they do in that moment? Did they blame the umpire? Did they cuss out the referee? Did they not hustle out to the field and high five their teammate? Because that is what defines it's like that whole character, like your character is what you're doing when nobody's watching. It's easy to have a good attitude when you're being the star, but how is your attitude during the hard times? That's when you really see what someone is made of. So I'm so thankful to my dad for teaching me the power of attitude through sports, but more importantly to carry over in life, which is more important than any sport. Because as much as we love our kids and we want them to all go be pro athletes, this many of them are actually ever going to go do that, and I see a lot of parents project that, and it's you're missing the whole boat completely if you're not working on these life lesson skills. So what kind of teammate are you going to be? What kind of attitude are you going to have when things don't go your way? What's your work ethic like? Are you blaming other people when things don't go your way? Is it the coach's fault or the weather or all these different things? That's the whole point you should be looking for in sports. And if you win some games along the way and you can get a scholarship or even go play professional, well, that's still just a small portion of your life. So you want to have those other things in order. But to come full circle for your question, I think the biggest thing that's holding kids back from grit and resilience is parents coddling them.
mhm.
And this is something that they are doing with the absolute best of intentions. They love their kids. They want to see them thrive. And when something goes wrong in their kids' life and they see them hurting, they see them struggling to make friends, they see them not doing well in school or not making the team, you want to comfort them because we've learned, like today we know so much more than our parents and our grandparents knew, where it was just kind of everyone's still trying to figure it out. And now we know, like, yeah, it's really important how you treat them and how you talk to them and the things that happen with their self-esteem and handling trauma. But if you put this bubble around them and they don't ever experience failure, if they don't ever experience struggle, if they don't ever experience pain, then they're not going to be able to handle that in the real world. And that's all the world is filled with. There's a quote you've probably heard, but it's a lot of parents today are going ahead of their kids and preparing the road, smoothing out the bumps, getting rid of the cracks and everything so that it's the smooth ride instead of preparing their kids for a bumpy road, because the road is going to be bumpy ahead. And so if you can have them learn, hey, it's okay to fail. Hey, it's okay to not succeed and have people know about it. Everyone else's life seems perfect on their phone, but it's not. That's a highlight reel. And in order for you to achieve anything, you're going to have to fail way more times than you succeed. That intro that you read with all those cool things that I've gotten really fortunate to do, if you read all the things that I was trying to do, you would still be going, because I failed literally. I have a list somewhere. I don't even know where it is anymore, but I had a list at one point of all the things that I was like this close to some amazing breakthrough happening in my life, and it didn't work out and I failed, or the person kind of swindled me or whatever. And like, all right, cool. Because every time you get that failure or that no, it gets you that much closer to the yes that can change your life. So to boil it down in just a few words, it's leverage failure strategically. And that's a really good way. And then talk about those things when they happen, and everything's a lesson. Even when you, as the mom or as the parent, messes up and lose your temper or react in a way that you're not proud of, that's one of the most powerful lessons that you can talk about. Like, look, here's even I did it wrong, and
Yes,
what I should
yes.
have done next time. And so many times we don't like to do that because we want to be a good example, but admitting your mistakes is one of the most powerful tools you can have in your belt as a parent. And then recognizing that and having that conversation of, here's how I could have handled it better, and here's what I'm going to do next time when that happens, and you hold me accountable.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you said so many good things, Jesse. And I just have to go back because I'm just really struck by how your dad, because my son played baseball and then he played Division I baseball and then he was actually drafted by the Oakland A's. So, I've
Wow.
lived in that sports world.
Amazing.
And it was so easy to go to the games and say, look at what that player is doing. That's so, look at how talented, they are, or, how, he just hit that home run, or focus on those things. That's not bad, to focus on what they're doing, but to focus on how is that player handling striking out, or, whatever it is, how are they handling when they're not winning? That if we focused more on that, developing that character in our kids of like, oh, notice what that person's doing when they got that no. And wow, they were courageous to even go for it and to go after it. And they heard a no, but wow, they kept on going. Like you heard a no and you had to keep on going.
Yeah, yeah, and that is really the difference between someone that's playing at the highest level and someone who's just could be that far away from a multi-million dollar contract. Is a lot of times it's the mental, it's the mind game, right?
Yes.
So, and if you can get them to lean into the passions that they have. So for this son, it might be baseball. Okay, so what's the lessons that we can learn through baseball? Now let's find people that are a good shining example, that are baseball centric and oriented. That is going to be something that he's interested in, he's passionate in, and it's going to come through to him, as opposed to maybe another kid who's into art or theater or all those things. So leaning into those things that they enjoy and then having that conversation, because that can make all the difference. As a for me with athletics, because I was smaller, I had to make less mistakes on the basketball court. And one of the things that I would see is that the people I'd play against would waste energy and focus blaming the referee,
Uh,
blaming the coach, the floor is wet. And when they would be wasting that time and energy, I'm like, oh, I have them now because I'm not going to do that. And I'm solely focused on this. And it gives me a little bit of an edge as an athlete. So to that kind of thing carry over in life and be like, all right, find those people who are great examples. And, I feel like it can be difficult to find mentors. And a lot of times kids are drawn to these people who are maybe famous or maybe have a big following, which is famous to kids now if you got a blue check and all those things. But helping them locate, like, all right, how is this going to translate to your life? Because you can go and watch 8 hours a day of other kids playing video games, and that's probably not the best use of your time. And if you can work on that time management as a piece of that as well, I think that's huge.
Yeah. And I think comparison can get in the way of the dreams too, because they see so much this influencer, this person doing this, and they're so much better than me versus, I'm going to go for it and I want to live out my dreams and what I aspire to,
Yeah,
I think that can affect them negatively too, because they're seeing so much
yeah,
out there and comparing themselves. Um,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
well, I want to hear what you have to say, but you have a program that you've developed.
Yeah.
And I want you to share about that, the attitude advantage. And when you started that and you're mentoring, I looked at your site. You have so many people that are sharing their testimonials, how their lives are changing and their kids' lives are changing. So tell us about that.
Yeah, oh, thank you for that. Yeah, it's those are the things along the way, along your journey that just it makes everything just so like this is why we're doing this. And when you get that feedback from parents and kids and educators and that kind of thing, but I wanted to say before that, I'm with you 1000%. I heard someone say this, I can't remember who it was, but I want to give credit that it wasn't my original thought. That I think just like with cigarettes, where there's a Surgeon General warning, they're going to come out with the same thing when it comes to social media and the internet. Because I am seeing it just absolutely devastate kids' lives. I spent the last couple years, I would do about 10 to 15 calls with moms every single day. So I would hear these same patterns of issues that kids are going through over and over. And I don't have to be a rocket scientist or Tony Robbins just to recognize simple patterns of like, okay, this is really what's going on. And that's something I'm actually working on now is what is that relationship with kids and their phone, and how can we keep it from absolutely stealing their innocence, from putting them in danger? Like literally every week I talk to a different parent whose they've been tried to be groomed by an older person who's pretending to be someone else, and they're talking through Snapchat or one of the different apps. So it's really scary, it's really serious, and I think the difficult thing that saddens my heart is as parents, a lot of times it's like, well, how do I not let my kid have the phone or have a limited use of the phone when literally every other kid on the planet does? And my thought on this is, what would your response be if you said, well, every other kid is doing drugs, or every other kid is robbing banks, or every other kid is depressed, anxious, self-harming, and having all these other different mental health issues when it comes to this epidemic of loneliness and all these things? Well, you wouldn't want any of those things. So, and that's what's happening. So it's hard either way, and it can be hard having your kid go through the eating disorder because they're influenced by the things they were seeing on TikTok during the pandemic, like you mentioned. Or it can be hard battling heads saying, hey, I know this isn't easy. I know this isn't what you necessarily want to do, but I'm doing this because I love you. And I don't want to prepare the road ahead of you. You need to develop the skills and you need to figure this out on yourself so you can limit your time and how you're going to interface with it. But if you don't have those systems in place, and that's what I'm putting together of exactly what that can look like for each kid and parent, you don't stand a chance. To what you said earlier of comparing yourself, I, as a grown adult person who'd been on TV a lot and had some success and accolades and those types of things, I couldn't handle it. I would look at things and I'd be like, how come he got that TV show and has a million followers? I worked harder and deserve it more, and I'm better looking and funnier, and you know what I mean, and all the things I'm trying to make myself feel better, right? And if I, as a adult who's pretty grounded in who they are and been through tough times and had good times, how's a kid who hasn't had any life experience able to do that. So I think you're totally on the money, and it's a definitely a tough one. It's easier said than done, but there are steps that can be taken to do that. So I just love that you said that. As far as the program, we have an amazing program, and it started with me going and speaking over the last 10 years, and I've got to speak to over 1 million kids live on stages, middle school, high schools, youth conferences. That's my sweet spot. I have so much fun. I still do about 4 or 5 a month all over the country. And next time I come to Chicago, I'm gonna call you and make
Yes,
you come.
please.
That would be really fun. Um, but the frustration with that model of what I was doing is I go there, they're all excited, they line up, they want to take a picture. I could show you videos, hours of them crying and talking about the most horrible things you can imagine that kids go through. And it's all because I was vulnerable and shared my underdog story and me getting bullied and the hard things that connects and shows them humanity. But I would leave and I'd go to the next town or I'd go home, and how many of these kids actually followed through or even knew how to make a smart goal, how to execute it, how to surround themselves with great people? So I got frustrated after a while because I felt like, oh yeah, they're all excited. They all write a comment on online. They might send a really nice message, but how do we actually help them make that change? And so that's what the program was born out of. And we work with them. We have a school version of the program that they do as a curriculum, and then we have one that parents come to us, and whether their kid is struggling in whatever area or they're just trying to excel and get that that scholarship to get that D1 baseball time and go on to the pros, with people like our mutual friend, Dr. E, who's a sports psychologist. I'm just the fun guy who comes in. Like this morning, I had a first session with a girl, and I'm like, "You've done therapy." Like halfway through it, I was like, "You've done some therapy and some counseling, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "This isn't anything like that, is it?" She's like, "No." She was laughing, or she's showing me animals on her ranch, and we're having a good time because what we do is we develop a friendship, a relationship, and all anyone, kid or adult, wants is to be seen, heard, and genuinely cared about. And that's the same thing with speaking. When you go up and you just are genuinely mean what you're saying, it makes all the difference. And then I brought awesome people who are way smarter than me, have way more credentials to do the one-on-one coaching and teaching these different things. And we just work them through these different life lessons. And some of them I've touched on. The big one's attitude and surrounding yourself with amazing people and forgiveness, all the things that we don't really learn in school, but we really need as people to be successful and happy and navigate this difficult thing called life. So it's just been an absolute amazing time. And in 90 days, kids come in, and we've seen, as you saw, it sounds like in some of those testimonials, their
Mhm.
lives completely transformed. It's like I remember we had one kid who he had low confidence, and he came in on the first session. He was like this. It was just this. He wouldn't share his face. So if you're listening, I just turned off my camera.
Oh, yeah.
And then he came on the second week, and we could see the top of his head. And then the
Yeah.
next week we saw his forehead, and then the week after that, his eyebrows, and then it got to his
Oh,
nose, and it was like, "Hey, you're a good-looking dude, man. We need you to show your face." And by the end of that 90 days, not only could he show his face, he made the basketball team. He had a new group of friends. We would be on our group call, and he would be texting and kind of laughing, be like, "Hey, you're not paying attention. What are you doing?" And he'd be like, "Oh, one of my friends just said something hilarious." And he went from this kid that was reserved in his shell to some confidence by making new friends, making the basketball team, and it was really cool to see a transformation like that. And what's cool is every kid is different. So we work with the kids, we work with the parents too, because so much of it,
yeah.
and all the moms listening right now, I know we talked about this before. I have two just things that I would say. One is they are watching you. Whether you think they are or not, they are picking up on your things. So if they're struggling with anxiety, we get a kid in there that's anxious, that's depressed. We look at the parent. A lot of times there's an anxious or a depressed
Oh,
parent.
yeah.
So the number one thing you can do is start with yourself, is be the best you that you can be. So, hey, you're telling them to get off the phone. We're talking about passionately about phone time, all that kind of stuff. But then if you're on your phone all the time and at the dinner table, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. So start with yourself. And that's I passed over this earlier, but that's the thing that's cool with what we do is we call it the same message, but a different messenger. So most of the stuff we're saying are the same things that most parents should be saying or are saying. And so they're just hearing it from someone else who isn't mom or dad. And I'm guilty of that very thing in my own life. As an adult, I remember I called up my mom. I interviewed this cool NFL football player, and he said something cool. And I told my mom, I was like, "Oh, you're not gonna believe what he said. You know, he said you got to work hard and treat people right. Isn't that such a good piece of advice?" And my mom was just like, you dummy. I've been telling you that for the last 15 years. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, this is a perfect example of not wanting to hear it from my mom, who's great and has always been in my corner, but she's my mom. I don't want to always, listen to what she has to say." So, start with yourself. And the second thing, if any parent in here, any mom is struggling, and you're hurting and you see your kid is going through a tough time, I've been on these calls and they almost always end in tears and whatever the situation is. And if you're here listening and part of this community, then you are one of the 1% of the 1% who is taking your time to actually see how you can help your kid turn his life around and just be happy and a fulfilled young adult. So you're already exceptional and you aren't alone. You aren't alone in this. So many people are struggling before the pandemic and even more after going through this. It's a difficult time. And if you can just offer yourself a little bit of grace, whether
Yeah.
you're a kid that requires a lot because he's on the autistic spectrum or whatever it is, just a kid's having trouble connecting or getting bullied, you aren't the only one doing this. You're doing the best you can, and things can definitely get better. So I feel like so many of us, back to that loneliness thing, we feel like, oh, we're a failure. And that's what I get from so many moms is they feel like it's their fault. But it's hard. It's hard to be a mom. It's hard to be a teenager. It's hard just to be a human person and manage all these things that are going on in life. So that would be my little encouraging word to any mom who finds herself in that situation who's listening.
Ah, so good. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think moms, that's one of the things we can be so hard on ourselves, but then that actually feeds us trying to do more because we feel like we're not doing enough because our kid might be struggling, and then we're hard on ourselves and we think we must be doing it wrong versus this is just part of the journey that our kids have to go through. So I love that you said that because whoever's listening, and the moms that are in my community as well, like I always tell that to them too. You are here, you're showing up, you want to learn, you want to grow in order to support your kids more. And that's huge. And you're modeling that, wanting to learn and grow for your kid. And that does speak volumes to our kids when they see us trying to learn and grow and yeah,
That's
not be
big.
on our phones
That's
all
really
the
big.
time, whatever that looks like,
Yeah, yeah.
So
100%. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I am so happy to meet you, Jesse, because I'm going to recommend you to so many parents, and we're going to be sharing this on our blog, and it's on YouTube and the podcast, because I was so touched just watching you on all your videos and how you relate to the kids. You can just feel it and see it, and that there's such a connection you have with them.
Yeah.
And this is what you are meant to be doing. I mean, it's just so apparent the difference that you're making. And I just want to thank you, and thank you for taking it to the next level, because you saw that, gosh, I go and I speak to these kids, but there's a much bigger need out there. And you want to serve and you want to help our youth and help parents. And so I love what you're doing. And I want you to share where they can find you. You also have a non-for-profit that we didn't talk about. You have your podcast. So just
Yeah.
let them know all the different ways that they connect with you.
Well, thank you for that. I feel the same way about you, and thank you for letting me be on your platform and connecting with everyone. And I'd love to help in any way that I can. So, um, and you said about that's really cool because I feel the same way. When you find your thing, when you find your why, and you find your passion, it completely 180s the way you show up in the world. And I found the more fun I'm having with the kids, whether it's on stage or in smaller settings, the more fun it is for everyone. And I didn't. It took a while to kind of figure that out, and now it's like, all right, like let's just go and have a blast, and that's how you get to them to connect and open up and all those things. So yeah, I get this question. So we put together a site. It's the attitudeadvantage.com and then slash welcome. And on that page, it has, they can subscribe to the podcast. They can join our Facebook community. I go live in there once a week with different experts, with people like yourself, and just let them share all their tips, all free, all of that. We have the teen program, the school program, me speaking, a bunch of different things on there. So the attitudeadvantage.com slash welcome is the best place to go check out, and you can get lost in the rabbit hole there for a long time. So I'll put that warning out there up front.
And it's a good rabbit hole, everybody, because I was so inspired. So,
Amazing, amazing, yay. Well, I'm so glad that we
yay.
did this. Even though it was through a screen, we're gonna have to do one in the future in person. Either
And
you in
so
Scottsdale or me out in Illinois.
I would love that. Absolutely. So we'll do that. And I would love to come on your show too. I would be more than happy to do that and
Let's
talk
do
to the parents. So we
it. Done.
will do it.
Yay,
Yay.
awesome.